Hi friends, and welcome to another episode of Lionsgate with your two besties, Sahdi and Omni. I'm Omni, and I got my girl Sahdi right next to me here as always.
Hey guys.
Last week we talked about Sahdi's death story and how she crossed over and what she experienced and remembered, and my experiences with seeing spirits growing up and how that was so normalized in my house that I didn't realize that it wasn't so normal. This week, we're going to start off by answering some questions about last week's episode, and we're also going to incorporate a story that was written in this week. If you, the listeners, have questions about episodes in general, or general questions, or even want us to read a story on an episode, go ahead and write us in at our email, which is sahdiandomni@gmail.com. That's SAHDIANDOMNI@gmail.com. But you also can find us on our joint Facebook page, which is Sahdi Omni, and you can find our Lionsgate podcast page and give us a like. This episode is going to be about ghosts and fragmented souls. So, first we're going to go over some questions that were written in, and question number 1 was, Sahdi, how did you start doing readings?
I was actually gifted a deck by my old boss, and she did tarot readings. And she came in one day and she brought in a deck, and she said that they didn't work for her anymore and that they wanted to go to a new home. Mm-hmm. And she instantly thought about me. And at the time, I'd never even thought about reading tarot. I thought it was cool. I had gone to some tarot readers in my past. But she just put them in my hands, and I started to play with them, and I had a connection to them right away. And I still have that deck to this day.
So was that after you died?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you, just feel a draw to, look up what each meaning was?
Well, the deck that I got was more of an oracle deck.
Okay.
And it had a book attached to it.
Yeah.
And so I read the book. And that's pretty much what I did. And I meditated on the cards, and
that's right.
And they spoke to me.
Okay,
through the images.
We'll try to stay on track. But okay, so when my partner, one of the things that drew me to him is he said, "I know more about astrology than you," and so he has been focusing on a deck, or ask a question on. I have a couple different decks. And one really resonated with him, so it's his deck now. And he would draw the picture, ask a question, draw the picture, and instead of looking up what that means, he would look at the picture and tell a story. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the 9 of Cups. I'm thinking that she's full, and translate it into the question. Mm-hmm. And then he sits and thinks on it and stuff. And I was like, that's not how that goes. You need to look up what the card means.
That's exactly
how
you're supposed to do it.
And then I told Sahdi, and she was like, no, that's exactly how you do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know much about tarot, so I was just teasing him. But I have trouble with the focus part of being able to just focus and meditate on it. Like we've talked about, mm-hmm. For me, meditation in the bath is when I'm the most relaxed, and that's when I feel there's sirens in the background. They're coming to get us. But that's when I feel relaxed enough to focus. And so I struggle with that. So I thought that was really cool. You're like, no, that's exactly what you're supposed mm-hmm. to do. And I guess, this person's asking, how'd you start doing readings? Well, it just took time knowing your deck, right?
Exactly.
Now, when Sahdi does readings, I know firsthand, she has 10 decks that she draws from. And I think it's so cool. When I talk about her doing reading for me to any of my friends, I'm like, it's so legit. She pulls mm-hmm. from 10 different decks, and it's amazing. Okay, so the second question is, Omni, you said your mom had a friend that was a palm reader. Was she a medium? Neither were mediums. At least I don't think so. I don't remember too much because this was her friend when I was young. Like I said, she did palm readings when I was my 5th grade birthday party. But I do know my mom's, she wasn't a medium, but she did have some psychic visions. I remember her telling me the story about when she was younger, she was driving and it was raining, and her windshield turned into a projector screen, and she saw two of her friends get in a motorcycle accident, and she was just crying. And when she got home, her dad had told her that I think one of them had passed away, but something like, and she'd always like have such good intuition on stuff. Like her intuition was on point, and she would have dreams and stuff here and there, but she wasn't like, I mean, she wasn't like, I know you shaved your legs, Ashley, in 3rd grade because I'm psychic. She knew I shaved my leg because I had a big gash out of my knee. And I told her I cut my leg with a butter knife. And it shaved one perfect strip off of my leg because she was also not dumb. But she has such a crazy story, or to her life in general. She got struck by lightning twice. And she wasn't hospitalized either time. And I remember watching a documentary with her when I was younger about other people that this has happened to. It was in her book that she wrote. And there was like a witness, I think, both times. One of the times she was like walking out of the laundry room in her apartment complex, I think in Florida. It might have been in Illinois, but anyways, she got struck by lightning. Some guy comes running up and he's like, I can't believe you just got struck by lightning. Are you okay? She was fine. And I just know like she couldn't wear a watch or it would stop working after a while. And she used to take us, when I lived in Arizona, she used to take us out back and watch the storms roll in on our trampoline. And I'm like, I got older and I thought, you're a lightning conductor. Why would you do that? But I love thunderstorms to this day. So,
Me
I mean,
too.
I'm still here. Okay, so if anybody has questions like that about any of our episodes, yeah, hit us up. I will read them on air. So we want to start with our write-in story. As always, it'll be anonymous. It says, when I was 5, I woke up. My brother and I shared a room. When you walk out of the room, across the hallways, my mom and her boyfriend's room. Then to the left was the stairs. It was the only way down. Well, when I walked out of my room, my mom's door was open and her boyfriend was sitting on the bed putting on his socks. He smiled and said, "Good morning." I walked down to the kitchen. As I rounded the corner, I could hear my brothers laughing and my mom talking, but there was another familiar voice. When I walked in, there was my mom's boyfriend, fully dressed, cooking breakfast. I just stared at him, confused. I had just left him upstairs. He had only one sock halfway on, and there was no other way down. There was no way he could have beat me down the stairs. All right. Well, that kind of feels like, it's not the same thing at all for me, but it does feel the time that I was talking about in the last episode, when I saw that spirit into the kitchen, and I thought it was my partner, and my partner actually came down the stairs, and I was like, what the fudge? But definitely something different. I don't know. What do you think?
I actually have no idea what that possibly could have been. It sounds like a glitch in the Matrix.
Yes.
I've actually had experiences like that before with my ex-husband where I thought he came home, I was half asleep, and he came in and he told me that he was home, and I got up a few minutes later and he wasn't there. And he came home after that, maybe 5 or 10 minutes after.
Oh, okay. So there was a TikTok trend on this. Not this exactly, but I mean, yeah, kind of like this, where, and this is, I mean, I love technology in the sense of that it connects us. I love the connection it brings to everybody, but I remember seeing videos of this girl was like, my son walked in and he was like, hey mom, or he was in the next room talking to her, and she was like, come here, and then he comes in 10 minutes later and she's getting irritated and he's like, I just got home. And then like there was a couple different stories and it was circulating for a while where they were saying, this is a glitch in the Matrix, like maybe an echo of another dimension. So in the next dimension, maybe the son got home 15 minutes earlier. So, and I think there was something kind of similar like that, where they're like, oh, this is when I think I died, and shifted into another dimension, and it was somebody getting in an almost car wreck, but then like different, like the Mandela effect, which, we should pick
So in a different dimension, they actually did get into the accident.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. If any of you have any ideas or experiences with this, please write it in, and we'd love to do an episode on that because that sounds awesome. Okay, let's start this off. Let's see, with ghosts. We said we're going to talk about ghosts and fragmented souls. So, what do you think a ghost is? Because there's so many different definitions and perceptions from TV and movies and stuff.
Right. So, I believe that all ghosts were human at some point. They are humans that crossed over. In my experience, I've noticed that if someone dies, they're usually earthbound for anywhere between 2 days to about 2 weeks, generally. And that's the time when they come and they say their goodbyes to their family members. So it's not uncommon where someone will be like, I woke up in the middle of the night and my grandma was there and she was sitting on my bed and she was telling me goodbye, and it really felt like she was there. And then they wake up in the morning and they find out that their grandmother passed away.
I've heard stories of that
And
from
I've
people
heard-
I know.
Yes, I've heard multiple people tell me stories like that. And usually for me, like being a medium, I've noticed that within the first 10 days is when those spirits will come through and be in your dreams. And you can feel them, you can smell them, and they're the most powerful.
Yeah.
As time goes on, they start to go into the other dimensions and they spend more time there and they become more comfortable with the fact that they're gone.
Yeah.
And they can come back and they can visit.
Yeah.
Sometimes they decide to reincarnate right away. And other times they decide to stay and learn their lessons and in the next dimension.
So, from my personal experience, from when you did my reading, you said my mom was off growing and expanding, and you pulled the galaxy card, and you said she said there's more than you could even imagine. And I just made me feel so full, and it resonated, and I believe it in my bones. And so that she's out there and she's learning and she's free. And same with one of my grandmas, not my sassy grandma, who's my mom's best friend in life, and they still connect on the other side, and they're learning. My one grandma was in not a so nice of a people talk about, oh, my grandparents were married for 50 years. It's like, well, 50 years ago, women couldn't even have a bank account.
Right.
She was in one of those marriages, and it was really freeing to find out that she's growing and she's like shed her cage. And she used the words falling in love with herself again. And I think that's amazing. So, yeah. Anyways, okay, so it's weird because I've had dreams of my loved ones, but I don't, and I do believe they come to me in dreams, but I didn't have dreams of my mom at all forever, and I think that was to do with me not being ready. And when, like I told you, I had that dream of her, when I had the dream of the bouquet in waves, like the bouquet of flowers and fields, I talked about this in the last episode, and there was like a sunset, and didn't see my mom in this at all. There was no symbolism in it at all, but I felt her presence there, and it was like her gently being like, I'm here.
Right.
And then after that, she's like...
Well, I know when I do readings and I'm tapping in, I put myself in an altered state of consciousness. And when you're dreaming, you're already there.
Yeah.
So a lot of times spirits will come to their loved ones in their dreams, and then they don't remember when they wake up.
What was the story you told me where they said, I'm there, you just don't remember? They were dreaming.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to tap into your energy while you're sleeping and come through and speak to your subconscious. But you might not remember it.
Yeah.
So you said that you didn't dream about your mom at all.
Yeah.
That might not have been the case.
Yeah.
You might have been dreaming about your mom every single night. She might have been coming to you and you just didn't remember.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like really important to pay attention to your dreams. Start a dream journal.
Yes.
Lucid dreaming and things like that, because you can go so far. When your conscious wakes up,
yes.
while, your subconscious is I'm stuttering over here.
No.
So your subconscious is always running. It's a
Yeah.
constant program that never stops. And when you go to sleep, your consciousness rests.
Yeah.
But if you can wake up in your sleep,
Yeah.
it's called lucid dreaming.
Right.
And then you can pretty much do anything.
Which I've had experiences with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've only done astral projection once that I can think of. But yeah, lucid dreaming, when I finally come to and I'm like, this is a dream. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
And then you remember it.
Yeah.
And then you can play with it in the beginning. You can have these lucid dreams where you're flying and you're doing all kinds of like crazy shit. Right?
I always swim through the air like it's water.
Right. But then you can get deeper into that. The better you get at it. You can meditate within your dream.
Really?
Yeah. Looking in the mirror is crazy too when you're dreaming because then you can kind of see, or looking at the time and things like that.
I've never done.
But you can go. You can raise your consciousness within your dreams by meditating.
It's like Inception, but real life.
Right. And then you can meet your spirit guides. You can meet your higher self. Once you realize that you're dreaming, you can say, okay, like, show me who I am. Show me where I come from. You could speak to your ancestors. You speak to your higher self and to your spirit guides, your spirit animals will come through.
So you said last episode I asked you the question, like, when you do readings, what do you see and all that? And you said, I connect to my higher self, and then I communicate through my higher self.
Right.
So if somebody, and you said I had to die to meet my higher self.
Right.
But for somebody on a spiritual journey that's searching for their higher self, like me, would you recommend lucid dreaming as a good avenue? I mean, obviously you don't want anybody to die.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I know with lucid dreaming, there's a lot of herbs. Mugwort is a great herb. It's super bitter, so mix it with some other stuff. We're drinking a tea right now with like lavender, mugwort. There's not chamomile in it, but that's a good one. Blue lotus and blue lotus flower is really good, but it's also good for anxiety and stuff. So I always recommend get a book, get some books on herbs, and that helps. Because lucid dreaming, like, I'm down with that. I'm so on with that. And, like, herbs and teas, like, help 100%.
Right. And with the lucid dreaming, the best way to do it is to write down your dreams the second you wake up. Because a lot of people, they'll get up and use the bathroom. They'll grab their phone. And that's
what I do.
Yeah.
I grab my phone too much.
You should wait at least 5 or 10 minutes to grab your phone.
I should.
Morning. Because you need to process your own thoughts and center yourself, because you're going right from dream state to awake. Right. And you need a few minutes to kind of stretch and just be alone with your own thoughts before you start bombarding your consciousness with other people's energy.
If I wake up with my partner, he'll be like, what were you dreaming about? And I'm like, I don't know. But I do know. I just don't want to, I haven't processed it yet. I mean, and sometimes when he asks me that, I'm like having a server nightmare. And I'm like, I don't even want to talk about this.
Right, but it's all, we'll do another episode on dreaming. Because I've taken some dream classes. And, I know a lot about.
And I have some really good stories about not only dreams, but like when I was younger, I had night terrors. And like, if you're dealing with night terrors, what's something that you can do to work yourself out of that, from a therapist point of view, but also shadow work, which is something we're going to probably bring up later in this episode. Okay, so the other thing we were wanting to talk about is fragmented souls.
Okay, so fragmented souls are a lot like ghosts, but they're a little bit different.
Right.
And there's layers to it.
Okay, so I know we talked about this a while back. There was a story where this video had been taken of this boy, and he had like a lantern, and he was like walking down the street, and it was very obvious he was a spirit. Like, I mean, he was a spirit, but like the camera picked up on him. And it had gone viral somehow, maybe TikTok, maybe YouTube. But this girl who's a medium picked up on his energy and was like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to help him. Basically what she picked up from him is that he was a kid in like the 1930s or 50s. I can't remember exactly what, but he was doing a paper route, and he'd gotten hit by a car, and he didn't know he was dead. And he kept telling her, this is like breaking my heart even talking about it, I have to get home to my mom. She doesn't know, like, I'm going to be late. I got to get home to my mom. She's going to be upset with me. And, like, he was just on a loop. And then I know you had mentioned, well, he might have been a fragmented soul.
Right.
And I was like, well, what is that?
And that can happen when someone dies really quick, like traumatically, violently. And they had no idea that they were just about to die. Like, he was just doing his paper route and going down the street, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's gone.
Yeah.
What I believe is that in a traumatic incident like that, a part of your soul can be fragmented from the whole.
Right.
And most of his energy probably crossed over, and, you know, they were waiting for him on the other side, but there was like a tiny piece of glass that was still left. Left in that area. So,
like, he could move on and either be on the other side, or like be reincarnated, or like he can be reincarnated without a piece of his soul.
Yes.
So what does that look like if somebody reincarnates and their soul is stuck in a loop?
Well, that's why shadow work is so important.
Yeah.
Because we probably have fragmented our souls through different lifetimes even. You know? And if it's like a teeny tiny fragment of your soul, the rest of your soul can move on.
Do you feel it missing?
Usually you do. And a lot of people, that's where PTSD comes from.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just say, oh, I feel like there's a part of me missing. Like someone that went to war. Yeah. And they might feel like part of me never came back from that war. I feel like I left a piece of myself.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And then they fill it with drugs or alcohol, or they're just an angry person, or they're a shut-in, or they have all these like symptoms of not being whole.
Right.
And trying to find ways to, through counseling or through, you know, through different partners, or, you know, having kids or something, like trying to fill that space within them that's empty.
Yeah.
And so what I work with is bringing those fragments of your soul back to yourself so you can become whole in this lifetime. Because a lot of people don't even realize why.
Right.
You know, they're afraid of the water, for instance. And they're afraid of drowning. And maybe 2 or 3 lifetimes ago, that's how they passed away. And they still have a fragment of their soul that keeps looping. Drowning.
I had a theory about that one. Like, okay, so my partner's really scared of heights. And I was like, oh, maybe you, like, fell from a tall building when in your last life. Like, I don't know. Right. But I never thought about, like, a piece of him being left behind, you know? Like, that, I don't know. That really resonates. That resonates with me because it makes sense. I mean, I stay open-minded, but I'm still a logical person. And so when things fall in line and it feels right in your gut, you know, you got to trust your intuition. I'm going on a side story real quick. So I bartend, and I was waiting on these 2 random people. And the girl was like, oh yeah, we're waiting on our late friend. I was like, oh, he's late? And he goes, yeah, he's always late to everything. I was like, well, my friend over there is always late, and he's Capricorn, so maybe your friend's a Capricorn. And I said that because I thought he's probably a Capricorn in my head first. And then I said it. And I have no filter, obviously. And then he gets there, and I'm like, hey, you know, Mr. Late, you know, that's very Capricorn of you. And he's like, how'd you know I was a Capricorn? And I was like, oh, you are? And she's like, oh my God, she was right. She was like, what do you think I am? And I'm like, I don't know, you give me Gemini vibes. And she was like, oh my God. She goes, do him. And she was talking about her man. And he was really quiet. And I was like, okay. In my head, I thought he just had a birthday. Like this little voice in my head, he just had a birthday. But I got insecure with it because I felt pressure. And I was like, I got to be right. And then I start overanalyzing. And I'm like, well, he's quiet. My man's quiet. Maybe he's an Aries. And I was like, I don't know, are you maybe an Aries? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh, a Leo? And he goes, close. And I was like, damn it. I said, you just had a birthday, didn't you? And he goes, yeah, I did. I said, you're a Virgo. I just knew it. And I was like, I should have went with my intuition in the first place. Because it never, like, and you know, when you're taking someone's order and you're like, you know, how would you like this? And in your head, you just know what they're going to say and then they say it. Right. You know, I feel like a part of this podcast that I think is really important is talking about how a lot of these little stories are important, because I feel like a lot of people go through it, but they're shamed into never talking about it. I don't know how many friends that I've talked to lately that is like, yeah, I have a story. Yeah, that this happened to me. I thought I was crazy. Or, you know, they grew up religious, and that's heavily shamed. Religious as in like maybe Christian or Catholic, and that's heavily shamed. Seeing spirits is not supposed to be, you know, they're demons and stuff. So a big part of letting this out and being so exposed and vulnerable with like all the listeners, I realized throughout this last week, I was like, man, you know, I have a lot of friends that know that I'm into kind of witchy stuff, but they don't know about like the stories. And it's very vulnerable to put ourselves out there. But I think it's really important because I feel like other people have gone through the similar situations. And so like, you know, I've been to therapy, and that's like, that's important for your mental health, but shadow work is so important for your spiritual health. And a lot of people who are going through stuff get, you know, I'm not against like prescription drugs at all, but I think there should be a balance. They get on the route, you know, PTSD, where they're just like, okay, well, I need to be on these pills because I have something wrong with me. And it's not like you're messed up forever. It's just you really need to put in the work and self-reflection.
Right.
And like, I asked you a while back, like, where's a good place that somebody could start with shadow work? And you gave me an author's name. Do you remember his name?
Charles.
I think it was Carl Jung.
Yeah,
that's right. I remember. Yeah. So you said Carl Jung, and I will be honest, I have not read that yet. It's on my long list of books I'm going to read.
Yeah, a lot of people throw the word shadow work around a lot, and most people don't even know where to start or what it really, truly is. So I would say start with reading anything you can on it. Watch YouTube videos, type in Google search, you know, like where beginner shadow work, and read up on everything, and then take what resonates with you.
Right.
If you're reading something and your body reacts to it and you get chills, or you tear up, or you know, you feel a knot in your throat, and that's what you focus on. Yeah. You know.
No, I agree 100%, because it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Right.
Just because you have something going on in your life and you work through it, you do some shadow work, and it doesn't mean it's going to help your best friend who's going through something completely different.
I mean, someone could have been molested their entire life, and this was deep shadow work that they need to get into over a long period of time.
Right.
And then there's people that just had like a few traumatic experiences during their childhood or something.
Right.
That they need to go back to and bring back to the surface, bring back to themselves those fragmented parts of them that they've pushed away, and heal those parts.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, well, I remember,
it is different for everybody.
Yeah, my sister had told me, my sister had told me, so my mom grew up in a haunted house, and I talked about that in the last episode, but I didn't talk about how my mom, after she had met my dad and had my two older sisters, went back to that house, and I guess there was a spirit in the attic that they never knew about, and not that they didn't know, that nobody connected with it, but my sister, who was like 4 or 5, did, and I guess she would play with her all the time. And then she went to my mom and said, the little girl in the attic told me Santa Claus wasn't real. And my mom, thinking it was just an imaginary friend because she'd never come across this spirit, was like, yeah, I don't know why she would tell you that. You know, Santa's real. Like, you don't want to ruin Santa Claus for your kid. And so my sister, being the sassy little girl she was, went up and said, my mom said Santa Claus is real, and you're a liar. And this little girl turned, like, she said skull-faced, and was like scared the crap out of her. And she's like, I want nothing to do with like any of it. Like, that traumatized me.
Right. It makes you wonder and question, like, what are imaginary friends with kids? You know what I mean? Like, I've contemplated that a lot of times. I had an imaginary friend when I was little, And my youngest son had an imaginary friend when he was little. And so they can get pretty scary at times. So it makes you think, is that just, imaginary? Or was that something different?
Yeah.
And I still haven't been able to really put,
Well, me and my sister used to count on the wall with our hands up like we were counting. But we would talk to the spirits, or not the spirits, we didn't call them spirits. We would talk to our imaginary friends and let them possess us. And that's fucking weird, scary. Right? Yeah. We're weird. Right. But we'd be like, yeah, we get, and like looking into the wall with our hands around our face, like we're counting, is how we would talk to them. And then we would be like, yeah, I'm such and such. And I thought it was like a game.
Yeah, there's so many layers to the whole ghost phenomenon. Like we were talking earlier when someone crosses over and, about being earthbound and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I have a story that my friend told me. His name's Bruce. And he was visiting family in Missouri. And he was outside one day and he noticed a young man standing in the distance. And it looked like he was wearing like a Confederate uniform. Yeah. And it took him by surprise, so he looked away, and then he looked back again, like, am I really seeing this? Yeah. And it was definitely a full apparition of a soldier. Yeah. And they had fought the Confederate War there, or the Civil War. Yeah. The Civil War. There on that property. And he noticed that it wasn't going away, and as he walked, it seemed to pace him at the same time. So it was aware of him.
Which could feel scary.
It can feel really scary. And so I had some theories on that, kind of going back to PTSD and things like that. Yeah. So can you imagine being a young man, a soldier, 18, 20 years old, right, and the horrible things that he must have seen on that battlefield? Yeah. Just the trauma and the violence and
losing your best friends,
your life being in danger constantly. So I feel like those are part of fragmented souls. There could be a couple different scenarios with that. Like I said, there's layers. So he could have been killed on that battlefield. Right. And he could be reliving the last few moments of his life. Right. And that's why he was only there for a few minutes and then he disappeared. Right. And he could have crossed over. Right. And just left that part of his soul fragmented on that piece of property, in that land. And then there's another possibility where he didn't die, Yeah. He could have fragmented his soul there and then went back home and started a family and had a wife and kids and an entire life. Right. And then when he crossed over, that part still remained there years later.
God, that makes so much sense.
You don't actually have to die to fragment your soul somewhere. Right. And be a haunting. So we could be living and breathing right now and having this podcast and doing this, and we could have a part of our soul that's fragmented somewhere, like in a house that we were hurt in, or a part of our soul was fragmented as a child. And these people that are living in the house that we grew up in are like, man, I keep seeing a little girl running around every once in a while.
But it's real. That's what I was wondering about the little girl with my sister. Right. The one that scared the crap out of her. She could have been like, maybe she was sick and didn't have anyone to play with, and that's why she connected to my sister because she was little. But it's only
a portion of the whole soul, so it's not all the personality of that person. It's one little tiny detail. And then it just
loops around. Oh, man. Remember we talked about last episode when I saw that spirit up against the wall and I saw what he looked like. Would you categorize, and he followed my friend's mom around. Just to recap, go listen to the episode, but just to recap. So he was apparently got in a car wreck. He lived at that house before my friend and her mom and her dad at the time. And he had connected to the mom for some reason and followed her around, and she felt like he was protecting her. Right. That's what they said.
And see, it's all about unfinished business too. Yeah. So he might have had unfinished business within that house. Yeah. Maybe it had something to do with his mom, so he gravitated towards the mother figure or something. There's always a reason. We might not be aware of what that reason is during that time, but there always is.
Well, like one time, okay, so talk about an inconvenient time of seeing a ghost or spirit or whatever. I was working and I was bartending, and I'd never seen a spirit at work ever. And I was bartending and I looked over to the door and I saw this man, and God, he looked like he was like 60s, 70s years old, but he looked like he was probably, I don't know. I don't want to say from the 70s because it didn't look like he was from the 70s, but he looked like he was like, that was his from what I felt from him, that was his like peak of life was the 70s. And so he had like long, shaggy, silver hair and a hat on, and I don't know, he was detailed, but I knew he was a spirit. And I remember seeing him out of the corner of my eye and being like, what the fuck? In the pit of my stomach, like, why is this happening at work? Because at that time, I wasn't open about shit to a lot of people there. I mean, now I'm just like, whatever, this is me.
That happened to me at work too, but a lot of people would see this guy come in at like 4:30 in the morning. He was actually a cook that worked there. He was there for like 20 years, and he had a heart attack on the line. He was always wearing a white t-shirt, and we would see him 4:30 in the morning walk past and then just disappear.
Like we, as in you and other workers?
Other people. And the cooks that have been there for years are like, oh yeah, he comes in every morning at 4:30, you know? Like,
that's crazy.
Like it was just like a normal thing. And you couldn't see him straight on. You could only catch him out of the corner of your eye.
Ooh, that's
and
what
it'd just
happens.
be for a brief second. But it was always around the same
time.
Area and the same time.
See, this spirit was there for about 45 minutes, and he waved at me, and I was like, don't talk to me right now, I'm at work. Right. And then he left. And I was like...
Wait, you saw him for a full 45 minutes?
No. Well, I didn't see him for the full 45 minutes. I saw him at the beginning, and I tried to avoid eye contact because he waved at me, and that freaked me out. When I looked straight on, I didn't see him, but I kept seeing him out of the corner of my eye. And then about 45 minutes, give or take, he was gone. And so my assumption was that he came in with somebody that was eating there.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I don't know who you are attached to, but not that... Not that I want to like heebie-jeebie stay away from me, but I was just kind of like, first of all, I hadn't seen a spirit in forever. I think that was after, I guess, my reawakening, you know. I'd seen them all growing up. I shut myself off. I was waking myself up over the last 3 years, and I'm pretty sure that was the first time. Maybe that was after I saw the other dude in the kitchen, but it was one of the first times I saw a spirit again, and in detail at least it was. And I was like, oh wow. And it's not that it freaked me out. It's not that it freaked me out. It was that I'm at work right now, you know, like I have stuff I got to do. I can't have you guys like bugging me here. And I haven't.
And you have to learn over a period of time, like if that begins to happen to you more and more, like it did with me. You have to be able to learn how to turn it on and off because it can get really crazy. And you'll want to tell the people about who you're seeing around them, but not everybody wants to know.
That's true.
When I first started being able to see spirits and full apparitions and things like that, I would want to tell people, but sometimes I was like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to tell them because there's a reason why there's a spirit trying to communicate with me right now. Right. And most of the people were open to it, but some people were like, you're freaking me out right now. They're not ready for that.
Or they're like,
so I've learned to just turn it on and off. Right,
you're seeing a demon.
Well, I remember one time at work, it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, and where I worked had video poker, and people would come in really late at night. And a guy came in, he's like, I don't have any money, I just spent all my money on video poker, like, do you have any soup or anything, you know, to eat? And I'm broke. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, nobody was in there. I gave him some soup and some coffee, and we were just talking, and I saw this woman, and he was Hispanic, and he was very dark skinned, and I saw this white woman standing behind him, and she had 8 arms. And she was like throwing babies around in her 8 arms. And she was catching them and then letting them fall. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, this is one of the craziest metaphors,
my jaw just hit the floor.
I've ever seen before in my life. And I was like, you know, I'm seeing something behind you. Is it okay if I tell you? And he's like, yeah, you can tell me. Like, what's up? And so I told him what I was seeing.
He probably thought you meant something literally. There's a spider behind you.
Kind of. And his jaw just dropped, and he was looking at me like, "You're seeing my mom."
Throwing babies?
So I guess he...
I was like, okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So his mom died of a drug overdose a year before, and she had 8 kids, and all of them went to foster care, and all of them were thrown from home to home to home to home, including him. Oh. And so that's kind of how he ended up like homeless, and that's coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning asking me for soup.
How did that hit him?
It was amazing. And me and him went outside, and I didn't have any customers at the time. And we went outside and we just talked for like a half an hour, and he opened up to me about some things, and I kind of did a reading right then and there with him. But that was in my beginning stages. I would never do that now, because I know how to block that off. So when I'm around people, I don't open it unless they ask me to be open to it. But when it first started, it was like me going through puberty or something, like I couldn't help it. Like if I saw something, I did, and sometimes I tried to focus on seeing something and I couldn't. So I really wasn't aware of like my power.
That would be frustrating. I'd want to tell everybody I'm such a loud mouth. Like I'm so loud, and I have no filter. I'd be like, hey, and I'd be so loud and tell their business. This is probably why my throat guys are like, no, you couldn't handle this.
Right. You could.
Yeah.
We all can. I think that we all have it within us. It's just whether we're open enough.
Yes.
Or if we can get away from that fearful part of ourselves that's afraid of our own gifts.
Yeah, because I think like touching back on society, like a lot of people experience this stuff, and all of us shut up about it.
Yeah, like you were telling me about the friend that had the dreams, the premonitions and the dreams, but it terrified her. It scared her, so she shut that off. So instead of going in, writing those dreams down, and really trying to use it like a muscle and working it out, and opening herself up to her gift, she could be She could be a dream walker. That might be her spiritual gift, is to be able to do things like that. And she had 1 or 2 scary dreams that came true, and somebody died, and so all of a sudden she shuts it off and doesn't want to do it anymore. Yeah. But what if the dreams could tell other things, not just about people dying?
Right. I could see how that...
If she could be some kind of prophet, you know, and just...
Yeah, I could see how when you only have dreams about people dying, you're like, fuck this. I don't want to.
What if you just have, a few? Yeah. And then it scares you off from it. Right. And instead, it's your consciousness trying to tell you, this is your gift. Look what you can do with this. Right. But and then you're afraid of it.
Yeah. And you were saying, like, okay, well, you've worked with spirits, and you've been to other realms. I mean, and so you have a different perspective. Like, the fear is kind of removed for you. And I think fear is such an enabler of keeping people stuck. And I'm not speaking like from a pedestal. There's things I'm scared of, obviously. And things I felt where I'm like, no. I mean, I talked about having night terrors as a kid, and possibly being haunted, and being scared of all that. Honestly, I think my biggest thing that I'm scared of is more so, not so much anymore because I'm working on it, is, I guess, judgment. Not what people think of me. And people will say to me, oh, you're so confident. And I'm just like, no, I'm human. Like, I got that big dick energy, but, and there's things I'm confident in now, but, it took working through that. I used to do theater, and I talk about, I'd always preach when auditioning, because it's something my mom used to say, because she used to be on stage, and she would say, everybody, even professionals, are uncomfortable when they're on stage. You just have to get used to being uncomfortable. And I've used that in every aspect of my life. I think about that all the time, where I think, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I got to get used to being uncomfortable. Right. And I think that saying really pushes your boundaries in a sense of, like, any aspect of life. Like, just now, we're talking about being vulnerable to people that we've known forever that didn't know that. Like, when I first met you, I didn't even know that you were spiritual. I didn't know your gifts. I didn't know any of that. And it took years before I knew how gifted you are. And it wasn't, you weren't hiding at that point. I just didn't know, but I knew you. You came to my comedy show. Mm-hmm. Like we knew each other for years, and then I got drawn to you when I needed you.
Well, I think that's a thing too when it comes with energy and tribe and soul family and these connections, that sometimes you can know someone for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And then one day you hang out and you're inseparable after that. You know, people come into your life for the, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, I always say we talk about soulmates. And I feel like if the human souls were a quilt, that your soulmates are all the people that are your square of the quilt. Mm-hmm. You know, and that can be like, I feel like we're soulmates. Like, we connected, and it's, you know, we're besties. Mm-hmm. And they could be... Well, that was a fun interruption. My cat jumped on our keyboard, so... He wants all the pets and doesn't want me talking anymore. So, typical kitty for you. Okay, so I know we were talking about soulmates, and what I thought, what I believe to this day. I did have a question for you, Sahdi, about poltergeists, because I'm touching back to my mom's haunted house, where she had grown up, and she's like, well, there was some poltergeist there. And I'm like, what do you mean? And, you know, she said her definition of poltergeist were like the trickster spirits, basically. What I consider a trickster spirit. Mm-hmm. But other people think that poltergeists are like evil spirits, you know, like the movie The Poltergeist, which was terrifying. Mm-hmm. What do you consider a poltergeist?
So, and this is just my opinion, it's what I believe. I believe that poltergeists are a lot like ghosts. Mm-hmm. They can be fragmented souls also. Right. But they stem from a very dark soul in the first place. Right. Like, we have really good people in this world, and we have really bad people in this world. Right. There's prisons full of them that are serving life sentences for the crimes that they've committed, and the hate that they have in their heart, and the pain that they are able to inflict on people. Right. So I believe poltergeists are a portion of that energy.
Like, when they die and move on, they like basically stain. I guess I think of it as like a stain.
And their energy, even though it's only a portion of that, can pick up more negative energy. And I feel like poltergeists to me are kind of like leeches. They love to be around energy where people are addicted to drugs, or people are in domestic violence situations, or people that are just like low vibrational in general have a tendency to draw poltergeists in like magnets. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So kind of like an energy vampire, a little bit.
An energy vampire, but they have so much rage and so much hate within this fragment that they are able to physically hurt you. They're able to pick up a table and throw it across the room, or move a chair, or
it's that powerful hate.
Put their energy on you to where you feel like you're being choked and stuff like that. They're the very dangerous side of the ghost. If you can say that ghosts have an energy signal. Right. Poltergeist would be at the very lowest vibration of that. Right. With the most toxic, heavy energy possible.
What do you think about, okay, so this just spurred in my head. What do you think about, like, psychopaths, I guess? Mm-hmm. Like, human psychopaths supposedly have no empathy. Right. Like, are they missing that? Like, is that? Yes. Okay. Exactly. I was like, that's what I thought of when you were explaining it. So, like, a psychopath, let's say, like, Ted Bundy. I mean, that's the first one that pops in my head. And he died and moves on. His rage or I mean, I guess he has lack of emotions, but he's very violent. Could his energy in your opinion, turn into a poltergeist?
Most definitely. Yeah. And poltergeists really tend to be usually significant to one certain place. Right. So if there's a poltergeist in a house, when the family moves out, generally it doesn't follow them. It stays within. And that's what makes me think that it's a fragmented soul. Yeah. Because they attach to places and sometimes even objects.
You know, that would make sense too for a psychopath, because they don't attach themselves to people. And they view people as possessions, for one.
Right.
And as objects. So attaching themselves to a house and a place instead of a person, because there's no emotions there to attach. Like, that makes so much sense. Try not to smack my hands. Really. I get excited and I clap.
So I feel like there's just like a broad range of ghosts. And I think that poltergeists fall under that category because at some point they were human.
Right.
But then there's other things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of shadow beings. Where
Yes.
people are tormented by this, you know, they always feel like they're being watched when they're in their house and they see this shadow.
I have a couple friends that talk. I've never seen... Okay, hold on. Let me recant that. I don't think I've ever seen one. I've never been... There's some people... There is this one person in particular that I'd known for a long time that they talk about seeing shadow people a lot. And they felt like they were being haunted. And I'm like, dude, I've never seen that. But there was that one time that I went to the park with the kids, and it was after dark. And I usually don't go to the park with the kids after dark, but we were just stopping by there. And it was right down the street, and it's lit. And we're at the park, and as soon as I got there, I just got this feeling like I shouldn't be there. And at first I played it off and just kind of told myself, well, it's because it's dark.
You had the kids with you, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, man, it's because it's dark. It's whatever. We were there probably like 5-10 minutes. And I was like, okay, we got to go. And I was like, get in the car. And then one of my kids, I thought, was hiding behind a tree. And I was like, hey, come on. I can see you. Come on, it's time to go. And then my son goes, Mom. And I was like, what? And I turned around and looked, and I could see this shadow silhouette of a little girl, like, running from tree to tree and hiding. And I thought it was one of my kids. And I turned around, and the kid that I thought it was in the car. And I was like, are you all in there? And he's like, yeah, we're just waiting on you. And I'm like, okay. And I turn around, and I'm like, I'm sorry to whatever spirit that was. And I left. I don't necessarily think that's a shadow spirit, but it was like a silhouette, so whatever. Right. But my friend that's told me about shadow spirits that they have seen, like, it's... The way she was trying to describe it to me, it reminds me... She's never seen the show, so I'm like... Supernatural, like when the demons come out of the mouth and it's like this dark mist. The way that they described it to me, I was like, that's what it sounded like to me. It was like a dark mist.
Well, if you've ever been in contact with a shadow being, you would know it.
Yeah, so
and it definitely wasn't the little girl in the park. It is something different. You could imagine being in a room that's pitch black, that you cannot see anything. And then you see a human form.
Oh, yeah, fuck that.
Darker than the darkest black that you can imagine. And they're sneaky. And those I do not think were ever human in the first place.
Okay.
I think that they are, I'm not sure how they're created or where they come from.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like they have a soul at all or were ever human. They prey off of negative emotions. They like to terrify you. Because they feed off of
the terror,
the negative emotion. And usually, from what I've seen and what I've heard from a lot of different people, they're usually male, and they're pretty tall.
Really?
A lot of them have hats on. They have a distinguishing walk also. You know, they're kind of just lanky and kind of walk through. And you'll see them out of the corner of your eye. And they want you to see them, too. They're not trying to hide from you. They want you to be scared.
Ugh.
You know,
it's
shake
like
your bed or, you know, a lot of people that have shadow beings within their homes or a part of their life, because those can follow you from place to place to place.
Are those people that get stuck in negative cycles, you think?
Usually.
And they attach themselves. I've heard of that.
They attach themselves to negative people or negative spaces.
Yeah. That's why I'm always working.
And the only way to get rid of those, honestly, because I do a lot of ceremonies where I help people get rid of, you know, different kind of energies within their home. With these, my best advice is you have to raise your vibration.
Yeah.
You know,
and you can't raise it by sucking it off other people.
No, you have to, you need to do some work if you have a shadow being following you around and tormenting you and terrorizing you. A lot of these people will have what they call sleep paralysis. That's what they label it as, where you're actually being, you know,
haunted by these people.
Haunted in your sleep, and you wake up and you can't breathe, and they're on top of you.
Or
they're in the room with you, and you're paralyzed and you can't move.
I love how we're talking about this right when my lights go down.
Right, I noticed that too. I'm like, ooh.
I have my lights are all set on timers, and so they automatically went down right when we're talking about all this the scary stuff. I was like, okay.
But yeah, with those kind of beings, you just have to raise your vibration. You have to get out of the situation that you're in, whatever it is causing you to be in this much emotional distress and turmoil and
because you can
negative
see it.
Cycle. Yeah,
when people, well, first of all, when you're in a negative cycle, you do, I think, become an energy vampire, and people can't. Especially people that are empathic or positive, they can't. You're draining to be around. And I think it's important for, people that are like that I don't think necessarily know they're like that, because they're not self-reflecting. And then other symptoms start happening, I guess, like that. I didn't even know that. Oh, that's crazy. See, we're all learning. I know, okay, so we'll briefly talk about this, and then we're probably going to call it time, but I had an abusive ex that unalived himself. And when I had a reading, I kept feeling like I had a message from him. And I was like, I want nothing to do with him. But you didn't know, you knew he was an ex. I just told you
we can backtrack a little bit. You asked me to come over and do a reading and see if I could pick up on an ex of yours.
Yes.
Who had crossed over.
Yes.
And, so you can take it from here. But
yeah,
when I showed up, I had no idea.
Did I tell you he unalived himself?
You may have, but I